GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
I'm rich, I'm wealthy, I'm JC Money.
Coming to you live from the Gear Network studios in Rochester, New York. This is the JC Money Show with your host, John Cimino, aka JC Money. And now, here's John.
Good day, everybody! Welcome to this edition of the JC Money Show here on the Gear Radio Network. My name is John Cimino, and I am JC Money on all social media platforms. I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you giving me a listen as we continue to move the train forward. And I also appreciate you supporting this by subscribing to this podcast. Whatever platform you use, you can click the subscribe button and it automatically downloads the podcast right to your phone.
Why can't I do that?
Every time there's a new episode, you're able to go ahead and have it delivered right to you automatically. And also to ProWrestlingTees.com/DJCMoney. It's a great way to get a nice comfy tee, fit yourself in there, a nice fit. You got a number of different styles you can choose from. I've got 5 or 6, I think, different designs on there with more to come. Gavin Glass has been an ace with pumping out podcasts. I'm pumping out podcasts, or attempting to. Gavin Glass has been pumping out logos for me, which has been fantastic. And there's great designs, Rochester-themed designs, even some of my classic ones that were written or designed by someone else, whose name escapes me at this moment, but it doesn't matter. It's all on there, ProWrestlingTees.com/TheJCMoney, and I thank you. But first, I'm going to deliver now some breaking news! It's been a while since I've actually used that little jingle. I was happy to find it, but used to use it on an old podcast. Anyways, breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. I am finally going to do it. I will be on Patreon. That's right. Hooray! Absolutely, Mel Gibson. Hooray indeed. I will be on Patreon now. You can find me at patreon.com/IamJCMoney. Here's the details of Patreon. It is a subscription. So keep that in mind. We are in a new era of how everybody does things nowadays, right? So if you don't kind of go with the times, you fall behind them, right? So here's what I'm doing. To get this kind of rolling, so to speak, it's a small little subscription fee. So we're going to start with just a $3 per month subscription fee. But what that will give you, let me get my notes here handy because I tried to record this a number of times and it pissed me off a lot. But $3 a month, what that's going to get you from here on out as a member of the TJCMS Patreon page is every episode that I am on Gear Network is going to be posted on there completely commercial free. And it's going to be posted earlier than its normal release time. So, for example, if I'm recording on a Monday like I am today with the intention of releasing this on a Wednesday like I plan to do, you're going to be able to hear this if you are a subscriber on the Patreon page on Monday when I record it. Not as I'm recording it. We're not doing live stuff like that yet. But when I'm done recording it, uploading it, it's going to go right to the Patreon first. You'll hear it first, and then it'll be released to the public afterward. All Patreon episodes completely commercial free. You will get like some little blurbs if I, throw out a plug for my Pro Wrestling Tees page. But as far as the commercials that you would hear on this podcast, on this forum, you will get none of those on that. Plus, full episodes, meaning anything that I cut from this episode that to fit the time into your podcast feeds that you hear, you're going to get it all. So every bit of it. I mean, some conversations go longer than the podcast that I release, to be perfectly honest with you. You're going to be able to hear every single bit of that on there. In addition, you're going to get other different things too. I plan on posting members-only blogs on there, members-only podcasts. There's a podcast called TJCMS After Dark that is on there right now. I have 2, maybe 3 episodes on there as of this recording, but more to come. And it's going to be great because typically after every podcast that I have a guest on, or if I'm doing a BLTD podcast or just a podcast with Ryan, I'm going to be recording something separate in addition to that. So there will be a TJCMS After Hours podcast where it will basically just be me and the guys kind of screwing around and continuing and expanding perhaps on some conversations. As well, video casts. Any of the video casts that we used to do, we toyed with that a couple of years ago, and it was cool to do, and I enjoyed doing it. I actually enjoyed producing it. If you want to see our beautiful faces while we're podcasting, I'm going to throw it up on there too. I'm not doing it right now, so you're not going to be able to see my beautiful face right now, which is great because I just got over a pretty shitty cold and pretty shitty allergy, attack this past weekend. It was gross. I'm going to put more things like that, but also too, because you're on there, because you're supporting me by being a Patreon member on my Patreon page, I'm going to support you guys. I'm going to give you guys a little break, and through that forum, if you are a TJCMS member on the Patreon page, you're going to get discount pricing on UPW tickets. I say just UPW tickets right now because that is the place that I am affiliated with wrestling, performing. But if I'm elsewhere too, and they have tickets and you want to grab those, I will strike a deal with them to kind of bring those savings to you as well. So it's right now, entry $3 a month. We're going to give this a whirl. We're going to have fun stuff on there. Again, I like to type. I like to do things. There are a lot of questions that I don't, I've always been asked that I won't answer on terrestrial podcast feeds, but I will sure as hell throw it up on the paywall. So by all means, I am going to throw it all on there. If you have questions for me that I can't answer on the normal TJCMS feed, then I'll go ahead and pop it right there on the Patreon, and you'll be able to hear it in all of its glory, unedited, uncensored, and of course without commercials. So thank you very much for that. I'm very pleased to do it. I've been, it's funny. I've been toying around with that for years. Honestly, for years. I've been playing around with it. I've been trying different things. And at the end of this podcast, you're going to hear on the free feed, because this is going on the Patreon feed as well. So if you're listening to this on Patreon, this does not apply to you, but chances are you probably heard it from the free feed before you signed up. But at the end, I'm going to go through the list of what it gets you, and especially pay attention to your own unique RSS feed you'll get. As a member there, you'll be generated your own unique link that you would put into your podcast platform of choice, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. You go ahead, you put it in there, and that feed is for you and you alone. So no one else can take it unless you give it to them. And I don't even think that would work either because it might make you log in. But either way, that feed is for you and you alone, and it's individualized per user. And it will download right to your device just like it would if you were to subscribe to the free feed. So more to come with all of that. It's already up now. It's live. It's not completely full, but I'm adding things on there as the days and weeks progress. So do please join me on there. We will have some fun. All right, my friends. What to talk about? I need to do more of these podcasts in order to justify this. And I like doing it. And I think it's cool, and it's fun. It really is. But sometimes I get these creative blocks that I can't get out of my head with. I cannot figure out for the life of me what I want to talk about. I cannot figure out for the life of me what I want to, discuss. And sometimes it's hard, and that's why there's several weeks between podcasts. And I can't decide whether or not I want to talk about news one week, I want to talk about sports the next week, I want to talk about wrestling the next week, I want to have an interview. So, ladies and gentlemen, the JC Money Show is officially hereby declared as a show about nothing. We are the Seinfeld of podcasts. So some days you're going to get talks like this where I'm just rambling about what I'm doing, and other days you're going to get chats like the next subject I'm going to go to, which will, of course, come after the commercial break here. I am such a nerd for spring football, and I don't know why. I know we're all NFL nerds, especially those that follow here and follow what we do on Gear. The ESPN to Gear's ABC is BLTD, and I am regularly on BLTD's podcast. BLTD has a podcast specifically called Trust the Podcast that is a Bills Talk podcast. I talk sports an awful lot. Some of these episodes are going to be sports-centric. Nobody does anything about spring football, though. Because when you think of spring, you think of baseball. You think football's over after the Super Bowl, but it's not. Especially this year. This year we've gotten more football than I think we've ever had in quite some time. We've literally gone from the start of the CFL season last year. If you follow CFL like I do or things like that, we've gone every week since June of 2022 with some form of professional football on TV, and it doesn't seem to be an end in sight here, but I'm going to specifically talk about the XFL and the USFL, the two spring football leagues, the late winter, early spring league in the XFL, and the late spring to early summer league in the USFL. And to talk about the differences between the two leagues and kind of give you an idea on why it's unique and why it's so cool, at least for me. XFL. But I'll go through some of the rules, some of the differences between the two, and then kind of leave it to you knuckleheads to roast me on my fandom for lesser sports, like some other folks, do in my inner circles here. But before I do that, we're going to kick it off to a commercial break. But again, really quickly, before I do that, I want to let you guys know about my Pro Wrestling Tees page. Again, ProWrestlingTees.com/TheJCMoney. It is a great, quick, and easy way to not only support myself, not only to support this podcast and support this network, but get you a nice stylish shirt. And you never know. You see me at a show when you're wearing one, I'll take a picture with you. I'll autograph the sumbitch. I don't care. But anyways, ProWrestlingTees.com/TheJCMoney. It's the place to go. It's the place to be, Jelly Bean. Get the shirts. Help support us. It's very. You can get tank tops. You can get long sleeves, V-necks, soft, premium soft, normal soft style, all sorts of stuff. Go on there. Not just me, too. I mean, you can also. Obviously, I want you to purchase for me, but if you are inclined to, go ahead and check the search feed. There's a ton of other wrestlers you can buy shirts from on there and support them as well. You can do it all in one order. You can buy a shirt from me, you can buy a shirt from Robbie Vegas, and you'll be supporting the both of us at the same time. It's pretty freaking cool. ProWrestlingTees.com/TheJCMoney. Give it a shot. We'll be right back right after this commercial break. Stick around on the JC Money Show.
You're listening to the JC Money Show on the Gear Radio Network. Welcome back to the JC Money Show. And now, once again, here's John.
Hello, everybody here. And hey, you know what? Welcome back to the JC Money Show. I know I'm rambling now, but hey, this spot right here, it's for sale. If you are a business owner or otherwise want some additional advertisements, I'm happy to do that for you. Give an email to Oh my God, if I can talk here. I'm jamming a gift, beautiful lover here. gearnetwork@gmail.com. Go ahead and send an email request through there. We'll be happy to discuss pricing. I'd love to get you on here. I'd love to put you over. We have a rather seismic audience still, which is crazy to me, and I thank you all for that. But yes, absolutely love to get you on there. If you are an independent wrestler or whatever, you have a business owner, you have a product you need to sell, you want to give yourself some advertisements, I'm your guy here, right here. All right, XFL and USFL. So spring football, it's concluding with one league, it's beginning with another league. Why the hell does anybody watch this or care, right? And if you're a football fan, you know, most football fans today, regular football fans, are pretty much NFL exclusive, or college football, right? It's the season. It's always been that way. And spring football leagues are nothing new. They've had the Arena Football League for a while. There's been a number of iterations of the USFL, or at least attempted to, kind of come back. I know there was a time or two in the 90s. There was a time in the early to mid 2000s where the new USFL was trying to launch, and it never really worked out. There was the Alliance of American Football League back in 2018 or 19, I believe, with the wonderful San Diego Fleet. I got all in on that because I thought it was cool, and that failed. XFL is now in its third iteration. Its first iteration was in 2000 when it was a joint venture by NBC and the WWE at that time. And primarily that league, as it's been well documented and well known, kind of struggled right off the gate. Originally, the original XFL was designed to be a competitor to the NFL, which kind of followed the similar strategy that the USFL did back in the 1980s. When they ran from 1983 to 1985 and they folded in 1986, they were trying to run as a direct competition to the NFL. But where the USFL failed in the 80s was that it ran in the springtime, and it was doing okay, and it had a decent following, and they had very good football at that time. They attempted to compete with the NFL for the 1986 season, and it didn't pan out, and they famously won a lawsuit, but I think $1 or $3 or something like that, and that folded the league. And it was at the behest, really, the strong arm of then New Jersey Generals owner Donald Trump. Yes, former President Donald Trump actually owned the New Jersey Generals of the original USFL in the 80s, because he failed out on the bid to become the Baltimore Colts owner in the 80s as well. He wanted to own an NFL team. He tried for the Baltimore Colts. I believe legend has it that Trump was approached for another team in the USFL, but he said no to that one because he wanted to purchase the Baltimore Colts. He was unsuccessful in his bid for the Baltimore Colts. USFL came back, and I don't know how it worked out, but he ended up becoming the New Jersey Generals owner. And his intention for the New Jersey Generals was to move that squad from New Jersey into New York, rename them the New York Generals, and in fact, he was looking to build Trump Stadium in Manhattan, an 80,000-seat stadium for the New Jersey / New York Generals back then. But I think that if I read it correctly, Trump was instrumental in moving or getting approved the USFL schedule for the 1986 season from the spring to the fall to compete directly with the NFL. And I guess the idea behind that was that he was hoping, similar to what happened many years prior, with the AFL-NFL merger, that something like that would happen, where the USFL would legitimately compete against the NFL, especially at that time, and then that could force the NFL's hand in a merger, and then he could finally own an NFL team. Which would have been an interesting... think about that from a historical perspective. If that were to have happened, there would have been 4 New York labeled teams. 2 of them would have been based in the state of New York, the Buffalo Bills and the New York Generals. Had that gone through, Jets and Giants would still be the New York Jets and Giants, but they would be playing in the Meadowlands, which would have really been a very interesting... it would have been very interesting, I'll tell you. I don't know who would have survived that one. Probably not the Jets. I don't think the Jets would have survived, maybe. The Jets probably would have moved and probably been one of the St. Louis teams once the Cardinals had moved out. Anywho, that was then, this is now. We're talking the XFL, we're talking the USFL. The XFL originally started in 2000 with WWE Vince McMahon. We covered that area. It lasted one season, didn't do very well at all, never came back. In 2017, I believe it was, there was a documentary from ESPN that was focused on the XFL. And they had Vince McMahon and Dick Ebersol were on there. Vince McMahon ended the 30 for 30 special by, kind of a hypothetical, kind of getting the itch to do it again type thing, right? Planting the seeds. He knew what he was doing. Smart businessman there. A year later, they announced the XFL was going to be returning for the 2020 NFL season. And when it did, it actually did very well. It was broadcast on Fox and ESPN, those family of networks. It had a pretty decent following. It didn't have the big crowds or anything except in St. Louis. The Battlehawks always had big crowds, and they do still to this day. There was another team that also did well too, but I can't remember offhand. Maybe it was Seattle. I think Seattle also did well as well. But it was good. It actually was decent football. It was good football. It was getting good ratings. It was pretty successful. And then COVID hit, and that completely killed the league, right? They ended up going bankrupt. Later on that year, Vince McMahon did not buy it back out or anything like that. He just kind of let it go. And then bids were placed. And of all people, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, his ex-wife and business manager, Danny Garcia, and a group of partners pitched in and bought the XFL with the intention on bringing it back in 2022. Around the same time, the USFL had been talking about launching and wanted to come back as well as in the Spring Football League capacity. And they had targeted a 2022 season launch. The new XFL was attempting to come back in 2022, but there was some sort of issue. I guess they were trying to work out a partnership between them and the CFL and working something else out there in order to get the XFL to kind of go in 2022. That fell through, didn't work out, and they ended up doing a 2023 launch. The USFL, on the other hand, Fox television networks really partnered with them and broadcast all their games on Fox, FS1, FS2, those family of networks. And really, the USFL was really kind of designed and modeled. 90% of their rules was really after the NFL. So I think their goal was to get their guys NFL ready, playing NFL type rules. There were some differences. A couple of the rules they kind of tweaked, they modified from the XFL, particularly their extra point rules. But top to bottom, they were following pretty much NFL rules, pace, regulations, that type of stuff. XFL wanted to do something different. They wanted to be fan-friendly, interactive, kind of change the games, doing things a little differently than both the NFL and the USFL did. So what I want to do is go through a couple of the different rule changes, the difference between the two leagues, because I think they're pretty unique, and I think they're pretty cool, and I think that if you understand those, you might come into at least the XFL with the open mind. I know the USFL is a little weird because they've really kind of they're doing the hub cities, and I understand it. It's fiscal reasons, but it's very hard to get behind a team. Like, I'd like to get behind either the Generals or the Maulers or whomever, right? But it's hard to do that when they're playing their home games in Canton, Ohio, or Birmingham, Alabama, or something, right? Where, really, if you're watching football, if you're watching the USFL, and you're trying to root for a team, it feels like they're really trying to get you to root for Birmingham. Because Birmingham's home base, USFL's home base, is in Birmingham. Birmingham has its own team. And Birmingham does have attendance for their home games. It's just the other ones that you can't do. So it's kind of like watching football back during COVID, when there was like pumped in crowd noise to make the games seem, much more intense than they really are. And this is not a knock on the players or anything with the USFL. The players are playing their hearts out, right? And they're, still trying to live that dream. It's basically, it would be like for my wrestling fans that are listening to this, it would be like if independent wrestling, if your favorite independent wrestling company was running out of big venues with no one there, right? Maybe you've got 15, 20, 30 people there, or in some cases 150 to 200 people there, but 150 to 200 people in a building that could fit 13,000 doesn't look like a whole lot, right? That's kind of what the vibe I'm getting from the USFL. But anyways, let's take a look at the extra points here. This is a rule that they have here. But one of the consistent themes in the XFL was the de-emphasis on kicking as a critical function during plays, right? The extra point system was emblematic of this as the teams were no longer permitted to kick extra points. XFL didn't do extra points at all. Like, they didn't kick extra points. It's either 1-point conversion, 2-point conversion, or 3-point conversion, depending on and depending on which type you pick, will depend on the yard setting. So a 1-point conversion, for example, would be from the 2-yard line in the XFL. A 2-point conversion would be from the 5-yard line, and the 3-point conversion would be from the 10-yard line. This allowed the team really to potentially tie the game if they were down by 9 points. So team kicks 3 field goals, you're down by 9 points. A touchdown and a 3-point conversion ties that bad boy automatically. The USFL adopted the format in a similar manner, but it kind of created a fusion, if you will, between the XFL's system and the NFL's version. So in the USFL, a 1-point extra point attempt is a kick from the 15-yard line, which is where the NFL currently does their extra points as well. They do have the 2-point conversion attempt, but that would be from the 2-yard line. And then they have a 3-point conversion attempt that they took from the XFL that they do from the 10-yard line. This gives them an opportunity to present, to either stick with traditional methods or roll the dice, if you will. Which I don't mind either. I really like both of those extra points, those extra point rules for both leagues. It's very distinguishable. It leaves it to be very distinguishable between the two leagues, although the scoring could also, be similar as well. So I think that, that's kind of a good deal there. Instant replay. The XFL eliminated Coach's Challenge and instead implemented a replay system where replay officials could review questionable rulings and legislate the game. Obvious errors in regards to player safety would also be subject to review. In the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter or during overtime, officials were permitted to correct errors that significantly impacted the outcome of the match. So a pass interference call, if one was not called or if one was called erroneously, a coach could challenge that in the XFL. The USFL, on the other hand, runs all of its replays out of its command center in Los Angeles, where all the decisions were made by one replay crew. Coaches are granted one challenge to use, and the command center will have the authority to overrule any incorrect personal foul calls and determining the accuracy of pass interference calls. It's more comparable, if you will, to the NFL's replay structure than the XFL, where Dean Blandino kind of makes the rules and kind of does his thing there. The kickoffs were different too, and I'll kind of leave it. I'll go with kickoffs and then maybe touch on the overtime as well. But kickoffs were very, very distinct and different in the XFL. So going off of their website, XFL's website, here is the rules verbatim from their website. The kicker kicks the ball from the 20-yard line and must kick the ball in the air and in play between the opponent's 20-yard line and the end zone. The coverage team lines up on the return side 35-yard line, and the return team lines up on the 30-yard line. Each team must have exactly 3 players outside of the hash marks on both sides of the ball and cannot move until the ball is caught by the returner. Out-of-bounds kicks and kicks that fall short of the 20-yard line will result in an illegal procedure penalty, taking the ball all the way out to the kicking team's 45-yard line. That is a very big one. Players can move when the ball is touched by the returner or 3 seconds after the ball touches the ground when the official waves his or her hands. If the ball is kicked into the end zone and is downed, it is a major touchback, and the ball is placed at the return side 35-yard line. If the ball bounces in bounds and then out of the end zone or is down in the end zone, the ball is placed at the return side 15-yard line. And finally, if a player on the return team touches the ball and it goes out of bounds, the ball is spotted where it went out of bounds. The reason they are doing that is because they are trying to encourage people kicking in the field, but also with the way that they're lined up there. Bullet point number 2 that I covered with the coverage team lining up on the 35 and the return team lining up on the 30. Player safety. They're hoping for more action, kickoff returns, but because they're not running at full force from the kickoff line like they do in the NFL, they're hoping that impact, there's not terrible impact between the players, resulting in better player safety. I actually am a fan of that. The USFL kickoff, on the other hand, is nowhere near as complex, and instead, it goes for the NFL's model, but moving the kickoff to the 25-yard line of the kicking team. This was done, NFL has it at the 35-yard line. This was done to prevent kickers from booting the ball into the end zone for the touchback. The receiving team must have a minimum of 8 players in the zone between their 35 and 45 yard line. And after the ball travels 20 yards through the air, only the receiving team may touch the ball. I'll kind of leave it at that. I'll put up a link where I took this all from in the podcast episode, in case if you decide you want to read up a little more on the rules itself. But I'm going to tell you right now, some of the play in the XFL has just been wild. And here's a wild one actually from this past weekend, from week 10. Fake punt. A fake punt actually went for a touchdown. It went very well. Here's the call.
It led to a touchdown last week in San Antonio. Mac Brown, he's going to do it again for Jordan Thomas. Jump ball. Thomas got it. Thomas is still up. The former Battlehawk rumbling to the sideline, to the end zone. What just happened?
Crazy. It was a fun play. It's a fun league. I didn't mind the XFL. I'm not fully sold on the USFL yet, so it's going to take a little bit for me to kind of get into the USFL mode there. But anywho, yeah, boy. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this edition of the JC Money Show here on this feed. But I invite you to go over to my Patreon page at patreon.com/IamJCMoney to continue the conversation and hear this episode in its entirety without commercial interruptions. For just $3 a month, you'll get full episodes of any Gear Network podcast that I am on without commercials and released earlier than its normal release date. You'll also get your own unique RSS feed to listen on any platform you choose. That means you're going to get your own individualized link that you pop into Apple, Google, YouTube, or wherever you prefer to listen to your podcast, and you will get all of these downloads straight to that app, individualized just for you, on whatever podcast platform you choose. It's a great feature. Additionally, because you're supporting me by being a TJCMS member on my Patreon, I'm going to support you with discounted tickets to future UPW shows. Members-only pricing for that, and as well, you'll get exclusive content including members-only blogs, members-only podcasts, members-only videocasts, and more as we continue to build this thing. So again, patreon.com/IamJCMoney. Head on over there, sign up. $3 a month. I promise you, it'll be worth your time, and I thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Gear Radio Network. For more, log on to GearNetwork.com.